guys, it's Misty. So, I don't know if you all watched the review I did of the Landscapes Breeze yarn. I think it was up last week. I'll link it down below. But in that video, I asked for you to comment down below what you'd like to see made out of the yarn. And Letitia commented that she would like to see it made into a hat. So I came up with this pattern and I really love it. It really, it puts me in the mind of those old Cloche style hats, and it makes me think of spring. Even with a little bit of the wool content going on here, you can see it's kind of got this flower petal, like this blooming. It's so pretty, and it blooms down into the rest of the hat. And see that? It's just really pretty. Let's get to making this. This is a 4-weight yarn. We are using a 6mm hook. And if you're going to use a substitute yarn, I would go for something that has a little bit of sturdiness about it, because I do notice when working with this that the give is not quite as generous with this yarn as it is like some other basic acrylic yarns. So that being said, let's get to it. Alright, so our hat is going to be made using a cluster stitch, and we are going to do that from the top down. So we're going to start with a magic circle. Now, if you need any special instructions to help you with a magic circle, I'm going to link that for you down in the description box. And we are going to get going on our hat here. So we're going to be making cluster stitches. Now I am going to go ahead and chain 2. This is not going to act as part of the cluster stitch. I'm just using this as a way to rise up to where I need to be, okay? So I'm going to yarn over here and go into that magic circle and draw up a loop. I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to pull through 2 loops only. Okay? Now I'm going to yarn over, go into the circle again, draw up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops only. I'm going to do that one more time. Yarn over, into the circle, draw up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops only. Now I have 4 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. And now at the end of my cluster stitch, I'm going to chain 1. And that is the stitch for nearly the entire hat. Okay, we'll be making some changes when we get down to the very bottom, but that's where we're at. That's what we're going to be doing for most of these rounds. So we want to make 6 clusters into this magic circle. So here was 1. Let's go ahead and do number 2. Pull through 2, pull through 2, pull through 2, pull through all 4, and chain 1. Now let's do cluster number 3. And chain 1. Alright, let's do cluster number 4. And let's go over that cluster stitch again in case you need any extra help. Yarn over, into the circle, draw up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, into the circle, draw up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops only, yarn over, into the circle, draw up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops only. You have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 4, and we are going to end that with a chain 1. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 clusters. Let's go in for our 5th cluster. Chain 1, and our 6th cluster. and chain 1. And let's just double count to make sure that we have only 6. I have done this several times where I've put too many in there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So let's tighten down our circle and pull. And right here is our chain 2. And right here on top, that is our first stitch that we're going to be going into right there. So in there and slip stitch to join. Now notice we're only doing chain 1s, we're not doing chain 2s. This is a little bit like doing a granny, but we're not using any chain 2s. All of our spaces are chain 1 spaces. We're doing that because, well, you'll see as we go along, but this really starts to like flare out a little like flower petals, and it just really made me think of spring, and I really liked it that way. So now it's time for our next round, and it's going to be an increase round, and we are just beyond our last chain space. So we're going to slip stitch over here into this chain space, so that we can start in the next chain space. So go ahead and you can either slip stitch into this top stitch, or you can slip stitch into the chain space just under this top stitch. I do that because I find that it's just a little bit easier to get into. And I'm not worried about this stretching and spanning over there. That will be covered up as we go. Alright, once we've slip stitched over to this next starting point, we're going to chain 2. And then we're going to work 2 cluster stitches with a chain 1 in between right into this 1 chain 1 space, okay? So yarn over and go into that chain space, draw through 2, yarn over, draw up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, draw up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. With 4 loops on our hook, we're going to yarn over, pull through all 4, and chain 1. Now we're going to put another cluster right in this same space. So yarn over and do another cluster right there in that same space. So just like if we were increasing on any round from the top down, everywhere we had 1 cluster and a chain 1, we're going to have 2. So now we're going to go right over to this next chain space, and we're going to put 2 clusters in that space. And we're just going to keep going on like this with our cluster stitches, 2, and now chain 1 and do another cluster. Pull through all of those loops and chain 1. So it's going to be cluster, chain 1, cluster, chain 1, and then another 2 clusters into the next. So carry on making 2 clusters into each chain 1 space. Don't forget to chain 1 between them all. And I will meet you around. Okay, so I'm just finishing up. I got a chain 1. I'm just finishing up that last cluster. And now I want to go over here and find my top stitch there. And right here it is, that long stitch. And I'm going to slip stitch right in there and pull that up. So here's row 2 that we've just finished, and you can start to see the development of our little flower petals that are happening there. See that? So pretty. So we have another increase round. So we are going to, once again, we're going to span this space right here with a slip stitch. We're going to go right there into that next space and put a slip stitch right there, okay? And chain 2. Now, okay, for round 3, we are going to be putting 2 clusters everywhere that we have 2 cluster spaces together. In the other chain spaces between the 2 clusters, we're going to be putting a single cluster stitch. So let's do these first couple together. We're going to yarn over and go into this chain space between the 2 clusters together, pull through 2, yarn over, draw up a loop, pull through 2, yarn over, draw up a loop, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through all, chain 1. And now we're going to put a second cluster in this same space. Pull through 2, pull through 2, pull through all of them, and chain 1. Now, if you'll notice, we have a cluster space here with 2 clusters and a cluster space here with 2 clusters. But right between these spaces, we still have this other chain space that we have to deal with. So in this space, there's going to be 1 cluster. So we're going to go right in there and make a single cluster. Pull through all and chain 1. Alright, so we made our single cluster and chain 1. Now yarn over and go into that next chain 1 space and make another cluster stitch. Yarn over, pull through all and chain 1. And then make a second cluster stitch in that same space. Yarn over, pull through all of those loops and chain 1, and then we have another chain space that doesn't have 2 clusters. So we're going to do a single right there. And that's pretty much how this row is going to go. We're going to put 2 clusters and a single. So I'm on a single right now. And chain 1. The next one has 2 and then 1. And then 2 and then 1. And it's going to be like that all the way around until we join. So I will meet you right back here at the join. Don't forget to do your chain 1s after every cluster. Okay, so I'm just finishing up that last cluster and chain 1. It was a single right there between 2 other sets. And I'm going to go right here into that top stitch and slip stitch. And there is row 3. Okay. So we have another increase row coming up next, and it's going to be just like the others. We are going to put 2 clusters in every space that holds 2 clusters. In every space in between 2 sets, we're going to put 1 cluster. Okay, so it's going to be very similar. So let's slip stitch over to this middle of this chain space there, and right here is right in between these 2 clusters. So we're going to have 2 clusters to start. Chain 2 and go ahead and start putting that cluster in there. Here's our first cluster. Pull through all and chain 1. And then another cluster. Here's our second one. yarn over, pull through all, and chain one. And now here we are right on the other side of this 2 cluster set, and we can see we have a chain one space right here beside of this single cluster, and now we have another chain space right here on the other side. So we're going to have a single cluster here, chain one, and a single cluster here. Okay, so right in there we're going to go and do a single cluster, and chain one, and then we're going to do another single cluster right here on the other side of that. Pull through all 4 of those loops and chain one, and then we're going back into a double cluster set. See that? How that's laid out there. If you're ever in doubt of whether you're making a single or a double, look down at the cluster beneath you in the row beneath you and look at where those clusters come together at the bottom. If there's 2 coming out of that same space, you know you're in a double cluster space. And then down here, you can spread them apart and see that this cluster, there's only 1 coming out of this space, so you know you're in a single cluster space to each side of that, okay? So we're going to continue around double clusters in the double spaces and single clusters on the side of those single spaces, okay? And I'll meet you around at the joint. Okay, we're going to connect our 4th row here. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. We're going to connect our 4th row. And next, we're going to be doing another increase row. Now, our 5th one is going to be our last increase. So come right over here and slip stitch into that next chain space and chain up 2. We're going to go right into making this double set of cluster stitches. There's 1, go through 2, pull through all 4, chain 1, and now let's make the second one. Pull through 2, go back in, pull through 2, go back in, pull through 2, pull through all 4, and chain 1. All right, there's our first set of cluster stitches, and now you can see for our single sets we now have 2 from below, which has given us 1, 2, 3 spaces that we're going to have single cluster stitches. So that is going to be the way of it for the rest of this round. We're going to go into here 1, 2, 3, these 3 spaces with a single cluster, and then we're going to be going back into these double clusters with double clusters, and we're going to do that all the way around. And just remember that you're going to have 3 sets of singles between each of your doubles, and I'll meet you back here at the join. Okay, so I just made my last chain 1 right before the join here, and I'm going to join in with that first stitch of the round and slip stitch. Okay, so this is our last row of increased stitches. So for the next row, and actually row 6 through row 10, it's going to be 1 single cluster stitch into every chain space. So even these that have the doubles, they're all getting 1 now. So our next round, we'll go ahead and go over and slip stitch into that next chain space, chain 2, and then go ahead and make a single cluster stitch into that space. Got all 4 loops, pull through, chain 1, and that's it. We're not doing a double this time. We're going straight into the next space with our next cluster stitch. Pull through all 4 and chain 1, and again into the next. Now I'm going to keep going around just like this, one single cluster stitch in every chain 1 space, and I will meet you back at the joint. Okay, I'm getting ready to put that last cluster stitch in there. I don't know if you guys can hear all the noise that's going on in my house right now. It's raining against the window. My big dog is snoring loudly. So it's we're supposed to get a big storm here in New England today, so we'll see how that goes. Right now it's just rain here in southern Maine, but everything's quiet except that rain on the window and the dog snoring her little guts out. I don't know, making me feel sleepy too. All right, now we finished up with that round 6, and see what happened there? We're starting to get that curl. Okay, here's the outside of our hat. We can just turn that around anytime we want to. Point that curl toward the inside, and that is what it's going to be for every round now for the next 4 rounds. So that was 6. We're going to go round 7, 8, 9, and 10 in just that single cluster. So slip stitch over, chain 2, and now every space, every one of those chain spaces, it's going to be that single cluster stitch. Make the cluster stitch and chain 1. That is every stitch around in every one of those chain spaces. And I'm going to meet you back at the end of round 10. You're just now starting round 7. I will meet you back at the end of round 10, and we'll talk about how to close out this hat. Okay, so here is our 10 rows done. So we've got here at the top, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rows. And you can see here, going down to the bottom of our hat, that it's time for us to start making some changes. Okay, so row 11, we're going to change up everything. So on row 11, we are going to be making a half double crochet into every stitch, and that does include the chain stitches. And we're also going to be decreasing every 10th stitch. Okay, so let's go ahead and start doing that together. Just go ahead and chain 1, and we're going to go right back into this same stitch that we just came out of. So yarn over, insert your hook, and there's our first half double. Now our next half double is going to go right into this chain space here. So yarn over, go down into that chain space, draw up your loop, yarn over, pull through all 3, and then we're back into this stitch right there. So that's 3. So let's start counting so we get to our 10th one. We can decrease. That was 3. This is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then this one right here is going to be our decrease stitch. So we're going to yarn over, we're going to go into this chain space, draw up one loop, yarn over, go into the next chain, or go into the next stitch there. Draw up a loop, yarn over, draw through all those loops. Okay, so our next one's starting on count 1 again. It's going to be right here in this chain space. So there's 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, 8, 9 is going into the chain space. That's putting 10 right here into this stitch. So the decrease is going to go from this stitch to this chain space. So yarn over, draw up your loop, yarn over, go into that chain space, draw up your loop, yarn over, pull through all. Yarn over, go into the next stitch. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is putting 10 into this chain space, and it'll expand over to this stitch right here. So yarn over, draw up your loop, yarn over, draw up a loop, yarn over, pull through all the loops. And now we're going right here into this chain space for our first stitch of our next set. So there's 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and right here into this stitch is going to be 10, and it's going to carry over into this chain space here. So here is the first part, yarn over, go into that chain space, draw up your loop, yarn over, draw through all the loops on your hook, and then the first one of our next set is going to be right here into this stitch. So yarn over into that first one. There's 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The 10th one is going to be right here and into this next stitch as well. So yarn over into that chain space, draw up your loop, yarn over into that next stitch, draw up your loop, yarn over, go through all the loops on your hook, yarn over, and into the next chain space for your first stitch of the next set. Only we're not going to have another decrease. We're going to come on down and meet our join. So right there into that stitch, into the chain space, into the stitch, into the chain space, and we're going to join our first stitch right there. Okay, now let's lay our hat out and see. As you can see, You know what? Maybe we should turn it over the other way. That makes a little bit more sense, doesn't it? So, as you can see, we've started to bring it around now. See that? How it started to curve in? It's looking so pretty. All right, so our next row, row number 12, we are going to chain 1, and we're going to do something just a little bit different here, okay? So our row before was half double crochets. So there's what happens when you make a half double crochet is you have your let's see, get us focused. You have your 2 V's, your top of your stitch right there. And then if you'll turn just a little bit, you can see you've got a third leg right there. You see that third leg? We are going to make a camel stitch. If you've never made one before, it's super easy. We're just going to be going into that third leg instead of these top ones. Now, there's 2 ways you can do this. You can make it from the front, or a lot of times your pattern will say to turn it around and make it from the back by picking it up on this side. We're not going to be doing that today. We are going to be making our camel stitches from the front. We're going to be making half double crochets right in to that back loop, that third leg of that half double crochet. So yarn over, and all we're going to do is go down and pick up. We're going to skip over our stitch right here, these 2 V's, and we're going to go right behind and pick up that third leg, just like that. Draw up our loop, yarn over, pull through all 3, just like a regular half double crochet. Now the next one, yarn over, go right there, right behind the stitch. If you turn it towards you, you'll be able to see it very easily. Right behind the stitch, and pick up that third loop right there. See that? Draw through and make your half double crochet. Yarn over, lean it forward, pick up that third leg back there, and make your half double crochet. You see that? That is what we're doing all the way around. We're just going in and getting that third leg back behind and making another half double into it. Okay. So you keep going around, and I will meet you back at the join when we start. So you keep going around, and I will meet you back at the join. Okay, so we are back at our join, and one thing that I wanted to talk about here before we join is where are we going to join at. So this was our first stitch, but we went in to the back, remember? So to keep going with the pattern we've got going right now, I want to go into that third bar of the new half double crochet there, and that's where I'm going to join. And slip stitch right into there. And you will see what's happening here with our hat. All right. Do you see these that look almost like knitted stitches right there coming sideways? That's what happens when we do that camel stitch. And the reason we did a forward facing is because we did all half double crochets. So what's going to happen here is we're going to chain 1, and look, because we did our half double crochets facing forward, we now have another row of that back leg that we can go into and make yet another line right here. So this sideways line here is going to become the brim of our hat. Okay, so right now we're going to go right into the one we just now slip stitched into. That's going to be our first stitch. So yarn over and go right back into that same stitch and make a half double crochet. And then again, now it's getting easier because our stitches here, they're already pulled forward for us. See that? They're already laying forward. And we're going to grab up that third leg back there, okay? So yarn over right into that third leg and make another half double. Yarn over into that third leg in the back, make another half double. And you see what's happening? We're making yet another row. See that? All right, let's continue around and I will meet you back before we join. Just go ahead and continue making your half double crochets into that back leg, and I'll meet you back around. All right, now we're back to the join, and we are just going to go right in to that back loop that we created with that half double crochet right there, and we are going to slip stitch those two together. And now we are going to make our final go around. And what we're going to do is we are not going to make any more half double crochets, but we are going to make one final round of single crochets into that back third leg, just like that. Okay, and just single crochet all the way around into that same third leg you've been, whoops, I lost it, into that same third leg that you've been using, and I will meet you back here at the join. Alright, so when we finish our single crochets, when we get around, it can be a little bit tough to see where our join is going to be because these stitches sort of start, the rows run into each other a little bit, but if you will look down at the bottom, you can kind of separate. There's your first row right there, and then this second row actually comes down, right like that, to meet up with that one, and then this one is sort of right here. So right here is our join, and we're not going to join into the back this time. We are going to go right into the main, see which one it is. We are going to go right into, this is our first stitch right there. So we're going to go right into there and slip stitch. Okay, and now draw in tight. We're going to fasten off, pull through. All right, now I gotta weave my ends in, but let's just take a look at what's going on here. So there is what our hat looks like. It really puts me in the mind of those old Cloche hats from like the 1920s. So when I first started working on it and I noticed this blooming, it was doing exactly what I wanted it to do with this cluster stitch. I was thinking about spring coming up and flower petals, and this was giving me all of that. And then I thought, oh, that would even look cute with a pom-pom. But then when I got down and I started working this end here and I saw how it resembled that sort of 1920s vibe, then I'm just like, no pom-pom. I mean, you can put a pom-pom on yours if you want to, but I really like this overall look to it. I think it's just really cool. So let's weave in our ends here. And let me get my yarn needle. And I'm just going to go to the inside and weave in a few times. This yarn, as I've been working with it, it's been really kind of a unique experience. You know, when I did the first review on it, that was the first time I've really ever worked with it before. And of course, you can see that it's chain spun. But then, as I was working with the yarn, I was coming upon these larger tufts within the strand, and then it would thin back down to almost nothing. And I was like, is this really chain spun, or is it like a roving? It is chain spun, but it almost can fool you a little bit in places. I just wanted to show you. Do you see this netting going on right there? That, I believe, is that modal, that cotton-like material that is making, when you've got a chain spun yarn, that is a woven piece of fabric or a woven thread there that is made into a hollow tube. And then these other fibers, these wools, see that coming out the end of it there? That is fed there inside of that and coming out of these openings in that chain all along the yarn. So it really makes it quite unique in that way. So it was really cool to work with doing this whole pattern. And honestly, I was looking online at Lion Brand, and this same yarn has got a colorway called Hibiscus. It's got like a lot of brighter pink in it. And I thought, really, with this flower petal look that I was going for in this hat, that it would look so pretty in that color. So I'm thinking about making another one of these in that color. If you want to look a little closer at this yarn, I do have an affiliate link for Lion Brand. I'll put that down in the bottom, that in the description box, so you can click through and read some more about it or purchase some for yourself. It's been really cool to work with. Now this hat, I'm pretty sure you could use pretty much any 4-weight with a 6mm hook, and you'd probably be okay. I will say that it works up a little bit different than some yarns, just because when you're working with it, it does have a very distinct feeling about it. And the stretch on this yarn, look there, you can tell our seam a little bit right through there, but through the rest of the hat, where we slip stitched and joined in the one over, we have no seam coming up that back. That's exactly what I was going for. But with this yarn, you know, let me clip a piece off of another kind of yarn and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, here is another piece of yarn I just had nearby. Now, when I hold this yarn, do you see that little bit of give that it's got? It's got a little bit of a spring. You know, it's this wound, you know, having those threads, those multiple strands in there wound together, and they just automatically have a little bit of spring back. See, that is a spun yarn that's got multiple strands, and there's a little bit of spring in there. You know, it gives a little bit, sorry, I think that's out of focus. It gives a little bit of spring back. This yarn, I'm pulling, there is very little spring back. It's not like there's no stretch. Of course there's stretch in the pattern once it's worked up. But just working with the yarn in general, you know, you're not going to get a lot of give in the yarn. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you're going to do this hat with another type of yarn, I would pick a 4-weight yarn that maybe a wool, maybe another chain spun type yarn, something that has got this more solid structure that doesn't have a crazy amount of give. Now, as you can see, the hat does stretch, but it doesn't stretch. Let's see what else I got in here. Okay, so here's a regular medium weight yarn, right, with the little puff stitches, and this stretch, you see that? It's kind of a dramatic stretch compared to this stretch. You know, you're just not going to be able to go the full way. You know, it's not going to fit. You can't get a small and just stretch it over a large head. That's not going to work with this yarn. This pattern in particular, you know, is giving it as much as it can. It is, you know, because of those chain spaces, it's got a little room to breathe in there. But, you know, so if you're going to work it up, if you want to work this pattern up in another yarn, also probably cotton would do really well. Like a 4-weight cotton, it would probably do pretty good in that too. So, you know, give it a try. And, oh. Alright, so I got these new tags. And we're just going to put them on. See my new tags? I have a feather here, and then I have a logo here. I can leave a, I'm going to put it right through there. I can leave in the description box. I got these from an Etsy store. Let's go up into the hat. There we go. I got these from an Etsy store. I can leave the name in the description box. They were so good and easy to work with. They just screw down. And there we are. Look at that. So cute. With my little bird logo on there. This company was a dream to work with. They were absolutely quick to get back with my questions, quick to help. I'll leave a link down in the description box. Also, I'm going to ask her if I can mention the name of her store, and in my next video I will give you the name of the store. I don't want to do that, and I'll also leave it in the description box. I don't want to just put it out there unless she gives me permission, but yeah, I will link the store down below. It is so nice. So there we are, you guys. I hope you like the hat, and if you make it, please tag me, and tag me on Instagram, and let me see your creations. I would love to look and see what you do with this, what colors you use, what yarns you use. If you like the hat, let me know. Leave comments down below. Let me know what you think of the pattern. And you guys, go out and do something you love today. Don't forget to take care of yourself. Until next time, bye-bye.